Now we are live, sir. A very good afternoon to all my budding architects, Professor Dr. Pankaj Chhabra ji, Department of Architecture, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, who is our expert speaker for today's talk, Advent of Modern Architecture in India. AIA Coordinator, Professor Himmat Bhatia ji, fellow faculties, and my dear budding architects of lovely School of Architecture and Design. We welcome at School of Architecture, Planning and Design, lovely Professional University, Punjab. Lovely School of Architecture has been ranked 6th best institute in India and first in Punjab by Outlook iCare ranking 2021 and 12th NIRF ranking in India and first in Punjab. The National Institutional Ranking Framework, that is NIRF, our school got 12 rank. That is, NIRF is a methodology adopted by the Ministry of Education, Government of India, to rank institutions of higher education in India. We are in the era of 21st century, the era that is the smart cities, sustainable buildings, contemporary interiors, and our graduates from lovely School of Architecture and Design are groomed to become lateral thinkers by focusing on critical design approach. LSAD is emerging as a global center of excellence for learning, research, and engagement in architecture, in design, and in planning. With exposure to an international environment, access to latest tools, software, and technology, our budding architects become in future architects who create buildings and infrastructure which are globally acknowledged and globally recognized. LSAD is a leading institution in terms of quality education and is ranked among top the 10 promising architecture institutes of India by the Higher Education Review. So our from the inception, our main focus to provide global attitude in the local environment and to give more enlighten on architecture and modern architecture and what are the salient features of in the field of in the world of architecture and design. Today we have expert speaker Dr. Pankaj Chhabra ji from JNDU Amritsar, and the topic of the talk is Advent of Modern Architecture in India. When we talk about the Professor Dr. Pankaj Chhabra ji, very renowned professor in the world of architecture, sir having different type of achievements. As we talk about the professional qualification, sir have completed PhD in architecture in the research area of influence of works of foreign architects in India on post-independence architecture 1950 to 1980. And sir is also the uh, gold medalist in MTech urban planning, gold medal with distinction, and also BR also in distinction, and many more achievements associated with Professor nominated. Dr. Chhabra is nominated for Professor P.N. Prasad Best Thesis Award for session 2008-2010 by Institute of Town Planners of India for MTech thesis, and Best Presentation Award for paper on role of construction industry towards sustainable development in International Conference on Rapid Advances in Sustainable Architecture. academic excellence is concerned, sir is presently working as a professor in Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, working as a senior assistant professor in the Department of Architecture, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, since 99, and many more publication, many more. Sir have also authored very more achievement in the particular research when we are going through the CV of the biodata of the sir, that having many more pages. So once again, we welcome you, sir, and over the session to you, sir. Thank you very much for giving for our budding architects for the enhancement in on respect. Welcome, sir, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nagendraji. Thanks a lot. And good evening, Hemant sir. And where today I'm going to talk about the modern architecture in India, the birth of modern architecture, how it developed, how it take its course. So let us go to the presentation. And before going for the presentation, I first of all thanks Lovely Professional University for giving me opportunity to share my thoughts on this platform. So I think we shall start with our presentation again.
Yes, sir. Share your.
I'm going to share my screen.
Yes,
is the screen visible?
Please click the slideshow mode, sir.
Yeah, I am doing it. So is it now in slide mode?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So our topic of today's talk is the advent of modern architecture in India. So before talking about the advent of modern architecture in India, we need to know what is modern architecture and how it takes its course in the world. After that, how it reached India, because it was in a very later stage of its development when it reached India. It first hit the European countries, first of all America, then Germany, and then European countries, and then come to India. So there is a long background behind this, why it has come into course, and what were the reasons for that. So before talking straightway to the advent of modern architecture in India, we'll start with the birth and development of modern architecture movement in the world since 1900. I'm not going back date beyond before 1900, but I'm just talking from 1900 beyond. So let us start with this. So what kind of architecture it is? So modern architecture is a new kind of architecture that a logical outcome of rational approach to design. Just a moment. So never been presented as a style, but considered as a movement of truths. So beginning, there is no clear-cut beginning, but was rooted in developments of late 18th century with emphasis on idea of progress. So this new architecture that is modern, we call, is based on the idea of functionalism, that is fitness or purpose. So that is what a modern architecture is. What were the various reasons for its emergence? One of the major reason was industrial revolution. It transformed the very pattern of life. So there was a requirement for a new building problems, railway stations, mass housing, skyscrapers. So simple preconceived idea of what a building is going to look like is replaced by working at its appearance simultaneously with its needs, taking nothing for granted. So it is just like a form follows function. So earlier it was a preconceived idea, but with the form follows function. Whatever is the requirement, we have to go by that. Then there is an effect of modern science, invented and discovered large number of materials, structural steel, reinforced concrete. So outcome, vocabulary, and we started building scientifically. So our building vocabulary increased and we started building scientifically. So prefabrication was another thing, outcome of industrial revolution, building parts produced in factories, building process changed into an assembly process of ready-made parts. So earlier it was a on-site fabrication. Now it was a prefab building, parts coming from the factory and just assembled over there. So outcome, personal touch and skills of individual craftsmen with his feeling was replaced by machine-made parts. Mechanically imitated hand carving produced bad architecture. That is what is termed in the John Ruskin in Seven Lamps of Architecture, depicted machine-made ornament as one of the three cardinal sins of architecture. So he advocated for bare bones of the buildings to improper ornament. Adolf Loos' equation of ornament and crime in 1908 and all the major figures in the modern movement stood squarely against ornamentation. So we are heading towards the simplification away from the from the, you can say, ornamentation. Question, where should the forms of this new style be found? In great individual leaps of inventions, revivalism of one of another particular period in the past, risk. One might copy the externals without reproducing the core qualities. If set of forms right from one context could be possibly be right for the another. Then is the another form is eclecticism. Eclecticism is collecting and amalgamating the best features of a number of past styles into a new synthesis. Failure. Absence of clear-cut rules of recombination, how much percentage to pick from which style. That will give a very really bad architecture. So then comes the approach of rationalism. Beautiful and appropriate forms would arise automatically if problems in hand were analyzed on their own merits, means the form follows function. So in the French theorist, inheritor of a rationalist viewpoint, advocated for the creation of forms true to the program and true to the structure. So the new architecture laid stress on the utilitarian basis of architecture, which was ignored earlier. Earlier, it was more of an ornamentation and a visual outlook, but it has now architecture has been changed to and more of a utilitarian basis. So another is the influence of the works of engineers. So engineering and machine design contributed in clearing the path of the modern architecture by giving new shapes and materials produced by industry. So French engineer in later half of the 19th century designed buildings for Paris exhibition of 1867, 1878 and 1889 showed what steel could do. So earlier of these exhibition halls was English designed by Sir Joseph Paxton in 1851 for Hyde Park exhibition Crystal Palace. So these are the early examples of the right use of mass production and of prefabricated buildings. That is a Crystal Palace, London. Then is the International Exhibition Paris in 1889 with a span of 115 meters because the requirements were drastically changed after the Industrial Revolution, and that gave birth to the modernism. So this application of engineering reached its new height at Chicago School. So in this Chicago School, office building starting point of Chicago School movement, later hotels for travelers and modern apartment houses. So the new potentialities of construction was used, which till date were used in bridges and industrial structures, the iron skeleton and called Chicago construction. Introduced the horizontally elongated windows called the Chicago windows. The skeleton as means of architectural expression later find its way in the works of masters of modern architecture. You can see that the building built in 1889 in Chicago, and after a span of 40 years, Le Corbusier's building in Geneva, having the properties of skeleton and the similarity between these two buildings, you can well imagine. So 1890 in America and then 1930 Corbusier, following that philosophy. Another example is a Reliance building, Chicago, 1894, another building of Chicago School. So again, and the Mies Glass Tower project, skyscraper glass and iron spirit, it is again after a span of almost 30 years that the Mies Vendro used the concept. Same is the way as the Louis Sullivan building in 1900 and the Chicago Tower by Gropius. See the similarity between the windows and all those things. So ideas are coming from the backdrop. So things that learned from engineering and machine age design gave modern architecture. So technique of using new materials. simplicity of line and honesty of expression, which was earlier missing, and the false ornamentation was just over the facades. So this progress of architecture on utilitarian and technical ground was already abruptly chalked off by Chicago's World Fair of 1893, in which mercantile classicism developed in East rose to power. So, Louis Sullivan commented on this: the damage wrought this country by the Chicago's World Fair will last half a century, and that come exactly true, that the movement that chalked off in 1890s comes and flourish after the Nazism came in Germany, and the masters of modern architecture shifted to America, and the movement moved along with them in 1930s, 1940s. So it was almost half a century away. So earlier, America was far ahead in terms of modern movement, but after the chalking off and the classical style, classicism rose to the power, and the movement lagged behind by half a century. So how the modern architecture come into existence? First of all is the Art Nouveau movement. That is the first stage of modern architecture in Europe, the frank expression of metal structure and the inspiration of a natural forms for the metal ornament. Early manifestations seen in 1880s, diverse examples as ornamental designs of Louis Sullivan and Gordy and William Burgess. Consolidation occurs in 1890s in the works of Victor Horta's architecture. So these are the examples of the earlier Art Nouveau buildings. But Art Nouveau could never be formed the basis of a new architecture concerned with applied ornament. So relied on subjective approach with regional accent that was not an ideal for standardized mass production. It was not fit for the mass production, which was the basic requirement at the time of modernism. So next comes the movement after that. Beyond that is beyond Art Nouveau is a more sober and more expression. Simple masses appeared in the School of Art in Glasgow, the interiors of which belong to School of Art Nouveau. In the exterior, less effects of curves, so more of a plain facade, but still some part is less, cleaning brackets on the main windows. Brackets were clean, but still some ornamentation in the form of iron railings. It was there. You can see from the picture that the iron railing in the ornamental form, still some part of Art Nouveau is still there. So then reaction to the Art Nouveau movement in 1895, Otto Wagen published Modern Architecture, in which he recommended qualities of simplicity, direct expression of means of construction, and admiration for modern techniques and materials. So in Vienna, the Steiner House, Adolf Loos moves towards rectilinear and volumetric simplification. You can see the plain facades. Along with that, you can see the rectilinear and volumetrically pure forms are being used over here. So rectangular stucco boxes punctured by simple openings without any cornice or ornamentation is there. It's a pure simplification of line as well as facade. So in Paris, Auguste Perret experimented with reinforced concrete to create genuine architectural forms with prejudice for orthogonal massing. Again, prejudice for orthogonal massing. And in 1907, Henry van de Velde, leader of Art Nouveau movement, became director of Weimar School of Art. He changed his ideology from Art Nouveau and decoration to purification of practical art, including architecture. So established the new values based on discipline imposed by the new techniques. From this time, rationalists and the engineers able to free themselves from revivalism. So the rationalists and engineers were able to achieve the target of freeing themselves from the revivalism, means that false ornamentations, what kind of buildings should be conceived, preconceived buildings, irrespective of the function, that the building should look like this, that has gone away, and the form follow function is coming into picture. So Auguste Perret designs of the apartment at 25. This is a rectangular concrete frame construction covered with, though it is a concrete rectangular construction, but still it's covered with the cladding of tiles. But the fifth story was without tiling, without any cladding. And a stage ahead in 1905, a step further by leaving concrete completely exposed. That is what we call today as a brutalism. And during the modernism period, it's called brutalist architecture. So we are heading towards that brutalism. So in the, so basically, just a moment. So in United States, FLW was attracted towards this material for capability of creating white spans, could be molded to his spatial ideas. So Wright also kept the surfaces of concrete bare. That is an example of Unity Temple Oak Park. Writer differ from Parrott in relying upon the rectangular frame as I suggested. Rectangular frames of modern movement linked to concrete over simplification. Just a moment. So after that, the Frenchman Tony Garnier also advocated the rectangular aesthetics in the city industrially. His belief rectangular and cubic forms were at the most suitable to a reinforced concrete construction and to a standardization. So more towards rectilinear forms, rectangular geometry, right angle massing, orthogonal massing. Parrott's vision to reinforce concrete architecture influenced the Le Corbusier, who worked with the Parrott ateliers and learned the basics lessons of reinforced concrete, and it forms the basis of the domino construction that the Le Corbusier gave. Then he worked in Peter Barron's office in Berlin, where he absorbed the idea of a new architecture must rest on the idealization of types and norms designed to save the needs of modern society while in harmony with the means of mass production. This gave context to his seminal domino concrete housing system of 1914-15. The principle of cantilever, the slabs extended well beyond the line of supports, step ahead of Parrott's system, separated out the structural and the screening functions of the wall by removing the fill from the frame. So weight of the building on skeleton, external wall as membrane can be punctured as a functional necessities or compositional instincts. Interior of the domino system allowed new degree of functional flexibility. So rationalism and reinforced concrete were the two elements which would eventually coalesce in the heroic period of modern architecture in the 1920s. So basically rationalism and the reinforced concrete. So whatever I talked about, I will be summing up in just one slide. That is, it started with the Industrial Revolution. Then comes the exhibitions, London and Paris, that is the works of engineers. And then comes the Chicago School of Movement, which was chalked off in America in 1890s. Then comes the parallel in Europe Art Nouveau movement, then Glasgow, Scotland, then the modern architecture reaction to Art Nouveau, that is simplification, Auguste Parrott, France, use of a concrete. Then comes the Le Corbusier's domino system. And at the end, away from the revivalism, rationalists plus engineers, and straightway Chicago movement ended over here, but in 1940s after half a century. Then comes the parallel, another movement in Europe. There are parallel response to mechanization is the Workman movement in Germany 1907, Cubism in 1910, Futurist in Italy 1914, Diestelts in Holland 1917. So in Germany, accepted industry, step ahead of Art Nouveau, Peter Behrens, Le Corbusier, Mies and Walter Gropius. They were parallel in 1910. Cubism established standards for pure geometrical refinement. Futurist attacked traditionalism. Diestelts abstract, including futurist ideas derived towards the simple and typical forms. All these movements parallel leading towards the modern architecture, and that the aim is the simplification and need-based architecture instead of a false architecture. So stimulus to this movement was given by after the World War destruction, that the World War of 1914 to 18, and the conditions after that prevalent in 1919 after the war gave its impetus. A new housing problem in Central Europe, complete economic and industrial reconstruction, condition of financial discipline encouraging strictly adherence to the what was necessary and practical. Two architects presently tendencies and trends of architecture between wars. Walter Gropius senior works date 1911 and Le Corbusier post 1918 figure. They were the two strands of modern architecture. So stimulus was given, and after the war, destruction of the First World War, then the Walter Gropius and Le Corbusier, two parallel figures, earlier inclined to arts and crafts, later distilled influence and changed to abstraction and mechanization. Whatever I had written over here is the earlier inclined to arts and crafts. It's known to very less people. Most of people know Walter Gropius from their Bauhaus school. So we'll be just touching a brief about this in the coming slide. And then the Le Corbusier purist beyond cubism, combination of abstract forms, handling of space and time. So came a new style called the international style. Le Corbusier, Mies van der Rohe, FLW, Frank Lloyd Wright. So suppressed in Germany in 1930s after the Nazism and flourished in America in 1940s and 50s. That was the what modern architectural movement was. So moving further, so Gropius got the opportunity in 1919 in Germany with the formation of Bauhaus in Weimar. It seemed Gropius returned to roots of arts and crafts movement, the William Morris. So that is the project of Walter Gropius. That is totally in contrast to whatever we think about the Gropius architecture and the claim so-called expressionism in these immediate post-war years. So a vernacular image, very far from the machine age of architecture of the Gropius. So it changed. Now the new orientation began in 1922 and 23, and the reason behind that was the Van Doesburger visit to Weimar. Distilled influence became the basis of design with emphasis on integrated form and industry. So Gropius style seemed to be reverting to the basic forms of circles, spheres, rectangulars, cubes, triangles, and pyramids. In 1925, he designed a new building of Bauhaus at Dessau and tried to express the philosophy of the school. That is the well-known building and with which we know the architecture of Gropius, but never knew that he was already a traditionalist mode before that. So we move next, and so whatever is then it is rectangular volumes of varying sizes, glazing becoming an emblem of machine age. Glass was laid flush with facade, reinforcing the overall volumetric character of the space. So Bauhaus building represents the language of blending abstraction and mechanization. So at the Bauhaus, the international style came of age. In 1928, Gropius left Bauhaus and school closed in 1933 under Nazis party regime. But Bauhaus idea did not die, and Gropius and Mies van der Rohe and emigrated to United States in the late 30s and took over the ideas with them. So then comes another movement, that is the purist movement. It is by 1917, Jondrette settled in Paris and met Amédée Ozoufront, an artist. In 1900, both of them exhibited their works and called themselves purist, and their catalog was a sort of a manifesto entitled Après Cubism, After Cubism. So while their paintings took over from Cubism, combination of abstract forms, handling of space and time, but their new direction was in favor of mathematical order and precision. From this point of time, Corbusier was believed that pure, precise geometrical forms were the appropriate ones for the machine age. So in 1926, Corbusier gave 5 points of architecture: pilotis, roof garden, free plan, free facade, and ribbon windows. An extension of domino system, which he gave in 1914-15. So you can see in the Villa Stein. So it's a purely pilotis, building is on pillars. You can see a corner free facade because corner window is just extending beyond that, means facade is free of the structural function. Then is a free plan, roof gardens, you can see from here. Then the free facade, ribbon windows are extending over. So his discoveries between 1914 to 1927 were a solution to the larger problems of an authentic modern architectural languages. So the international style, by the beginning of 1930s, it was possible to single out at a new style in the buildings of different function, size, material, meaning, with obvious features in common all over the world. These were strip windows, flat roofs, grid of supports, cantilever horizontal planes, abstract features like tendencies to use simple rectangular volumetric articulated by the crispy cut openings to emphasize hovering planes and interpenetrating spaces. So after that, I'm just discussing two examples of buildings, that is by the Villa Savoy by Corbusier and Barcelona Pavilion by Mies van der Rohe. So Barcelona Pavilion, demonstration of power of modern structural invention, thin roof slabs supported by steel supported coated in chrome, a conception recalling the domino skeleton but single story and far from the low cost construction instrument of standardization. And next comes in the picture is Villa Savoy at Poissy, horizontal white box, the strong horizontal emphasis, the overall shape, the single strip window, pilot is used as a dominant feature. So you can see in the picture that the pilotis are clear and the ground is for circulation. So Le Corbusier in 1930s were large projects in 1930s were large and complex buildings for which the topology of the villa was inadequate. So again, and the large buildings, a steel frame box lifted off the ground on pilotis. I already showed you this, shown you this figure. And the pilot is organic in nature, in contrast to the purest cylinders of the villas, and left in the bare concrete, strip window replaced with a fully glazed facade as a more honest expression of free facade. It's a fully glazed facade instead of strip windows. So reduction of building to a basic geometrical shapes of rectilinear surfaces. So during the same time period, FLW masterpiece had shown his innovation and exception of a Tompkins classic style prevalent in the America at that time. The first is the falling water house in Pennsylvania, horizontal expansion in all directions from the interiors, integration of architecture and nature, a very nice example of organic architecture given by the Corbusier. White horizontal seems to be the influence of simplification of international style on right. So during the same time period, Mies van der Rohe and Walter Gropius arrived in USA in 1930 due to the Nazism in Germany. Their arrival gave impetus to the international modern movement in America, which was reeling under the weak eclecticism drive. Gropius joined Harvard Graduate School of Design to teach there. Its influences are at Harvard, an era of Bach's arts-inspired instructions came to an end. Nut and bolt rationality, allied to contemporary social and technological reality, had taken their lead role. So dormitory block by Gropius. Mies van der Rohe also designed Alliance Institute of Technology and the Lakeshore Drive apartments. So post Second World War scene. So saying after Second World War brought it a severe physical and cultural destruction. Mies' arrival in Chicago in late 30s and his later commission in the city and his enormous influence ensured that the images of European avant-garde of the 20s became realities in the America of 50s. In some countries like England and Brazil, it was matter of extending tentative pre-war beginning. Now we are just shifting to the focus to our presentation topic, that is India. In other countries like India and Australia, modern architecture had to begin from scratch. So basically, whatever had happened in till 1950, 40s in America, in Europe, in Germany, and that started taking place in India after 1940. Though it started in bits apart in India in the start of 19th century, but it started with a major movement in 1940s. So we are now shifting our focus and shifting our presentation to the birth and development of modern architecture movement in India since 1900. The background of modern architecture and how it developed in the world, what was the reasons for the development of this modern architecture, how this movement transformed its stages, that was very essential as a prerequisite for this thing. So in India, it mostly flourished in Chandigarh, Delhi, Ahmedabad, Mumbai, Kolkata, and Bangalore. So to understand this, we have to see the stylistic analysis of architecture of pre-independence era is as the foundation of this movement was laid in the middle of the 20th century. So by the 18th century, the rich architectural heritage of Indian classical architecture of Hindus and Muslims fell into decay. So towards the middle of 19th century, colonial architecture impact was predominant due to the political dominance of the Britishers. So first of all, classic and Gothic architecture in 1840s, and it started in 1840s to 1890s. The classical architecture came to stand as a symbol of British imperialism throughout the empire. The examples clearly show GPO Kolkata, Senate Hall Kolkata. Then comes the, I am going to the brief statistical analysis to reach to the modernism. Gothic architecture introduced in India by Britishers to Indianize their architecture by incorporating elements of Indian architecture in the buildings, and Gothic, being the highly decorative, could accommodate Indian motif with the comparative ease. What was the reason why the Britishers were trying to change the architecture and going to the Gothic? Reason being, there was a revolt of 1857, and they think we should use the elements of Indian architecture to show the Indians that we are belonging to these people and their architecture through the architecture. And the examples of this is the Bombay Municipal Corporation and Victoria Terminal, Mumbai. Then is the Indo-Saracenic architecture. Gothic was a precursor of the Indo-Saracenic, an effort of Britishers to show a sense of belonging to India, I already told you. And then comes another change, that was the Edwardian era architecture in India of 1920, the classical revival. Again, the reason for revival, the then Viceroy, Lord Curzon, believed that the classical was the embodiment of highest aspirations of imperialism and the appropriate response to the rising Indian nationalism. They wanted to suppress the rising in the Indian nationalism, and for that, they again took the path of architecture and the tool as an architecture to show their power and the supremacy over the Indians. Victoria Memorial in 1906 to 21 and the Connaught Circus, New Delhi. These are the examples of the, again, the revival of classicism in India. Neoclassical architecture, Edwin Lutyens and Sir Herbert Baker. Lutyens used elements from Mughal architecture, chhajas, jalis, and chhatris in the design based on European themes with a classical base. Viceroy's Palace, 1912 to 1929. Then in the buildings of Secretariat, Sir Herbert Baker followed Lutyens' path and grafted on chhajas and chhatris and jalis. So North Block and South Block are the examples. Influenced buildings of late 1930s and early 1940s. Then is the Teen Murti Bhavan and Municipal Corporation Building, Bangalore, Mysore by PW, display of similar aesthetic philosophies. Then moves departure from Lutyens' neoclassical forms towards the refinement and simplification. These were the works of Walter Sykes George and Arthur Gordon Shoesmith. British architects came out to the help of Lutyens in their design of New Delhi. Architecture produced buildings signifying departure from the neoclassical architecture. So the two buildings are examples of modernism as the St. Stephen's College, New Delhi, that is the simplicity of facades and massing, and a dramatic departure from neoclassical, and St. Martin Garrison Church, pure European expressionism. Then Thompson and Matthews, Kolkata. Arnold John Thompson and Bernard graduated from Architectural Association London. Architecture, amendment of neoclassical idioms in favor of simpler forms. Lady Dufferin, Victoria Hospital, Kolkata. The influence of international modernism, again a plain facades, simplicity of line is coming into existence. But a strong reaction to this simplification was given by the modern India architectural movement. Savdeshi movement by Shirish Chandra Chatterjee was the moving force behind this movement. Under the slogan of Savdeshi, revivalism was initiated as a political tool. Now the Indians started the revivalism as a political tool, and the mode again was an architecture and architectural building, the expression. So Lakshmi Narayan Temple, popularly known as the Birla Temple by Shirish Chandra, in the temples of antecedents of temples of Bhubaneswar, a revivalist nature. So again, moving away from rationalism, that was the basic gist of the modern architecture. So then comes a bits and parts movement by the foreign architects that came to India and brought with them the modern movement in India. That is, first of all, is the Eckhart Matthews embodied with rationalist ideas. Indore Palace, the simplicity of form and style. You see just straightness of lines and the indebtedness to international style, very straight lines and volumetric expressions, geometrical form. Another was the William Marinus Product Architecture Details work of Dutch architect Lighthouse Cinema Kolkata, Purity of Form. Again, a pure volumetric expression and plain facade. Then Antonin Raymond and John Akinsha, American architects, Raymond, close associate of FLW, Frank Lloyd Wright in Japan. Golconde, the reinforced concrete building with simple form. I think it is the first modern building called the first modernist building in India. Then there comes the Otto Koenigsberger, came from Germany in 1939. Architecture, research on tropical architecture, responsible for the plan, not the architecture of Bhubaneswar and Odisha, Odisha, the Dining Hall Auditorium Institute, Science, Bangalore, simplicity of line and form. So the influence of the works of Matthews, Dudek, Raymond, and even Koenigsberger had little immediate impact on the subsequent architecture of India. Its effect was probably subtle and indirect. So the architecture profession in India at the time of independence and immediately after independence, there was a new challenge of celebration of a new identity created by independence. It is in this context that the modernist architecture took off in India. In short run, it resulted in little change in nature of architecture because most of the Indian architects of the period were either pupils of Claude Betley at Sir J.J. School of Architecture in Mumbai or worked with him in Gregson, Betley and King. Their works were a fusion of their conservative 1930s outlook and the images of modern buildings. So the Vigyan Bhavan in 1955, elements of Hindu Mughal architecture, perforated jalis over here, and then is the Chhaja, and at the same time, and entrance with the Chaitya arches like of Ajanta. So all these things, simplicity of form and massing following moderns, though the form is a simple. So they were following the modernist principles, but with a very timid way. Then the Secretariat building, Bhubaneswar, the central tower was inspired from the cinemas of Mumbai in the Art Deco period. These are central tower. The wings of the buildings are utilitarian modernist. So the impetus to the modern movement in the post-independence era in India, the return of foreign trained architects set the intellectual pace for Indian architecture in the post-independence era. Habib Rahman worked at the Los Angeles and Walter Gropius studied at MIT. So West Bengal's new secretariat building shows the clarity of form sought by the Bauhaus. So it's a clear influence of Walter Gropius on the works of Habib Rahman. Pigeonhole shades keep the sun off the sun's facade. A climatic adaptation can be termed as a utilitarian modernism. So then the Bauhaus influence also ran through Habib Rahman's PWD work in New Delhi until the end of 1950s. So the Auditor and General Building controls building, and then the Daktar Bhavan, these are the buildings, old buildings of Delhi. So it's a direct repetition of Bauhaus thinking. Then is the Achatya P. Convin. They finished his studies from Harvard in 1947. Ahmedabad Textile Atira, popularly known as, and the first phase of PRL Lab, Physical Research Lab, Ahmedabad. These are two clear imprints of Bauhaus in these buildings, a clear simplicity of facade, clear lines, purity of form, purity of line, newly developed, use the newly developed building technologies. So that is what is the modernism coming to India in a full-fledged manner. So then is a Pilu Modi studied at the University of Southern California, and Durga Bajpai worked with Alvar Aalto, Finnish architect, the Intercontinental New Oberoi Hotel 1958. So purity of form, crispy cut openings. Then is the international style propagated by the Gropius. So it's a Gropius influence coming into picture in a wider perspective. So another figure and a parallel stand was that Joseph Ellenstein, an American architect, came to India in 1952, had little direct contact with the FLW. His work of the 1950s with 50s and the early 60s owes much to the Wright's ideas. The India International Center, the American International School, organic in aesthetics character and strivings for an alliance with the nature. So another one is the Gautam Sarabhai and the Gira Sarabhai worked at Tellison with the Frank Lloyd Wright during 1940s, the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad, linking of inside and outside, and the ties of nature reflect Wright's organic architectures. So the influence of FLW's philosophy is there. So the work of these modernists sought a complete break from the past and the vision for the future architectural course of the country. So Nehru's patronage to the modern architecture by assigning the design of Chandigarh to Le Corbusier, a Swiss-born French architect, gave impetus to the efforts of these modernists. At this juncture, India was ready for the arrival of Le Corbusier with favorable conditions for him to explore new ideas and to provide a vision for what architecture should be. So then comes the main course of architecture of Le Corbusier in India, which laid the you can say after the foundation being laid by the foreign trained Indian architects. So the work, then the edifice was built by the Corbusier of modernism in India. So Corbusier was not simply reproducing local ideas, but modifying the solutions to the demands of climate and limitations of the local technology. Le Corbusier's conviction was that though the new Indian architecture would have a number of universal qualities, yet it would emerge essentially from the scientific approach to the problems of the climate and a positive acceptance of the limitations of modern building construction in a poor economy. So Capital Complex Chandigarh, considered to be the Indian answer to the New Delhi capital, glorifying the British Empire with its domes and colonnades, avenues, and enormous squares. So the Assembly Hall building in Chandigarh is a daring contrast of portico, the main block, and the superstructure. So the imprint of man's hand in the rough formwork, it's a pure brutalist architecture that is displayed over here. The monumental portico supported over 8 pieces, pilotis of Corbusier's vocabulary is clearly evident in this. Then comes another high court, the new language of monumentality that went well beyond the spindly limitations of the international style. So monumentality has been played at a peak in this building. Then the grand order of concrete piers, the new language of monumentality. At the same time, the Bristolale, the respect for climate, that was a very typical feature of Corbusier's buildings. And another building, that is a Secretariat building, an image of architect's theory is very much clear in this building, the free plan leading to flexibility of space in its usage. At the same time, the contrasting elements and patterns, expression of facades, independence from structure. So then the city center Chandigarh, 1951 to 65, pure application of domino system, pure cubical forms, and Corbusier's principle of honesty of expression. There's no hiding material behind the cladding. So it's a pure expression as far as truthfulness in terms of form and form of materials. Central Plaza, broad concrete finish, honesty of expression in the sector 17 Chandigarh. Buildings on pilotis, ground for circulation and expression of Corbusian vocabulary that is very clearly evident in these buildings. See the double story circulation space in between, and then after that the extended office space above that. Then is a Mill Owners Association building, Ahmedabad. The purity of form contains all the formal inventions, pilotis, the free plan, the free facade, roof garden, and domino structure, Bristolale and Bettenbrand. Excuse me. A masterpiece of Corbusier's invention, facade of diagonal Bristolales in raw exposed concrete, you can see very clearly from here. And in the rear view, slabs and columns seen as a horizontal shells, these slabs and columns, and reminiscent with the domino skeleton that was given by Corbusier in 1914-15. So the entire philosophy behind Le Corbusier's Indian works is based on the objects within the Indian traditions. Le Corbusier realized the resonance among his Bristolale, parasol, pilotis, pier vocabulary, and logias, verandas, pavilions, airy halls of Indian tradition. So these elements were not used by just exporting a global formula, but rather he adjusted forms with a certain universality, rethinking their meaning to fit the climate the social conditions and the ancient history of India. So the architecture of another architect, that is a master, foreign master, that is architecture of Paris Generate, modern, another architecture of master of modern architecture, Paris Generate. The Punjab University campus, the library Punjab University campus, so a perfect cuboid form. So it's a pure expression of concrete louvers, a Corbusian vocabulary. Administrative building, massive in scale, with raw concrete, brutalist architecture, a perfect orthogonal massing. And another building in contrast to these is the Gandhi Bhavan, finished in white marble chips against the red sandstone finished buildings of the campus, reminiscent to the visual emphasis of tomb of Salim Chishti in the white marble in the great Fatehpur Sikri courtyard. So it's a pure and abstract form. Then there is a junior secondary school that is a perfect right angle massing, exposed brick facades, again an honesty of expression and a tribute to the climate by the Paris Generate. So the architecture of Paris Generate is that in tune with the local context and the creating architectural forms which take into account the nature of construction material, available climatic condition, and respect for the basic needs of the people who would live in them. Rather, I can say, maybe it will not be over commenting on this, that the Paris Generate architecture is more local than architecture of a Le Corbusier. As far as the Indian architecture is Indian modern architecture is concerned, he was more sensitive and concerned about the climate of India and the need of people of India. So the architecture of Jane B. Drew and Maxwell Fry, the works of Jane B. Drew and Maxwell Fry were also in resonance with the works of the Paris Generate. The works was full of their preoccupation with climate. The couple was responsible for designing majority of the housing in the city, along with a few institutional buildings. So government college designed by Maxwell Fry. I will not going into the much of the details of the buildings of these two architects, just having a glimpse of this one building. And then comes the Louis I. Kahn. The Kahn displayed the timeless power of massive brick construction to suit the context by utilizing the surviving the technologies of cottage manufactured brick and labor-intensive construction, which was against the sophisticated construction system used in his contemporary American work. So that was a totally different from his contemporary American works, that he used a labor-intensive construction techniques in India and used the brick that is a very easily available material. So Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, buildings in exposed brickwork, unfinished brickwork building mass with a visible concrete piers reflects the combination of tradition and modernity. So monumentality in the Louis I. Kahn Plaza, arch and circular openings, Kahn's vocabulary. So honesty of expression and simplicity of form and line, play of light and shade. So the arrival of these foreign masters in India was the turning point in the history of modern architecture in India. Their influence on Indian architecture proliferated primarily through those budding architects who had the opportunity to work directly under him, either in India or abroad. Also, it proliferated with those architects who even did not work with them even in India or in the foreign commissions, but still influenced by their works. So LD Institute of Indiology, Ahmedabad by B.V. Doshi, a pure geometrical abstract form, exposed reinforced concrete finish, displaying honesty of expression. You cannot distinguish between this building being designed by a Corbusier or a B.V. Doshi. That is all the elements of a Corbusian architecture in this, or modern architecture in it. So there again, angled windows for soft light to the interiors. The windows are there like this. Then the purity of form and simplicity of line in the Tagore Theatre Sector 18, designed by Professor Aditya Prakash. Then the Shri Ram Center in New Delhi by Shivnath Prasad. Though Shivnath Prasad never worked with the Corbusier on any modern masters during their Indian commission or abroad, still he was very much influenced by the architecture of modern architecture of the Corbusier and in the world. So innovative massing using pure forms, a piece of sculpture in exposed reinforced. So you can see just the details of this building. Inclined louvers, pure cylindrical form, and above that is a cube, and the typical rainwater spouts as designed by the Corbusier. It's a pure influence of a Corbusian architecture on this, or modernism in on this architect. So a typical rainwater spout and this clean, clear skyline. And the Akbar Hotel, New Delhi, again by Shivnath Prasad, and you can see the resemblance between the truthful expression of service floor in reminiscent with the Corbusier expression for the shopping floor of United D Habitation. United D Habitation, he has used the same thing as it was used by Shivnath Prasad in the Akbar Hotel. So ISBT New Delhi by another architect, Rajinder Kumar, he worked with these these foreign masters during their Chandigarh commission. A bold statement of orthogonal massing using the same pure form, uninterrupted space of ground floor for the free movement, signifying that a Corbusian philosophy of ground for circulation. Exposed reinforced concrete with truthful expression of shuttering and pattern. So facades embellished with the concrete breast soleil, the straight skyline with the presence of terrace elements. Terrace elements are present over here. Send the Dina Bank by Hasmukh C. Patel, an impressive built form fusion of one pure and another abstract form. One pure form and an abstract form on history of expression and the brutalist architecture, and the deep recessed, crispy cut and rectangular fenestrations over here, pure features of modernism and simplicity of line. So verticality highlighted by the use of recessions. So then the General Hospital, Ripudaman Lal Singh, the again expression of modernism, pure orthogonal form, finished in exposed concrete. Then is the simplicity of line, straight skyline, crispy cut openings, monochromatic effects as far as the color combination is concerned. Then is the Vikas Minar, that is by Habib Rahman, one of the staunch follower of Gropius architecture. So purity of form and idiom of modern architecture, frame structure, facade independent of structure represented by corner end-to-end windows. So the windows represent that there is no relation between the facade and the structure. So facade is just a membrane and the structure is free from that. That is a simple straight skyline, truthfulness of expression, monochromatic in texture. Then another form of modernism that was followed by FLW and then proliferated through even in the Khan's architecture and in the Anant Raje, who is the follower of FLW and Louis I. Khan. So modern architecture Vasant Vihar by Jasveer Sachdev, perfect right angle massing, the Khanian effect, circular windows. Then the contextualization of design from climatic and planning perspective and play of light and shade reflects clear imprint of Khan's design philosophy. Circular and arched openings, play of light and shade. So Management Development Center designed by Anant Raje, it's a clearly bears a signature of architectural vocabulary of Khan. So an edifice of Khan's architectural vocabulary, though it was in the same campus of the IIM, that is why the architecture has a pure signatures of Khan. The journey back from Chandigarh thus began in late 60s, death of Nehru in 1964, and countrywide celebration of Gandhi's birth centenary in 1969 also contributed to the back journey trend. The revival of Gandhi's call to build upon the indigenous technologies and symbols of Indian culture provided a moral basis for the rejection of the Western derived imagery of the contemporary Indian architecture, which was advocated by and propagated by Nehru with the arrival of Le Corbusier in Chandigarh. So the departure of Khan in 1974 further freed Indian architecture to choose its own direction, even after the later works of even B.V. Doshi. B.V. Doshi was more of a regional architecture or contextualization rather than the typically following the modern features of the foreign architects, foreign modern masters. They were drifting away from that typical following to the Indian context as well as climate is concerned. So the post-independence modernist buildings completed in India in 1970s, one sees the beginning of shift away from the reliance on the foreign architects and international architectural ideas to the homegrown and bred. What occurred in India is that the ideas and thoughts behind modernist architecture persisted, but the expression associated with the architecture increasingly began to be adapted to local conditions in an effort to create a regional architecture within the modernist fold. That's it. Thank you very much. So that is what I wish to tell you about the modernism.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. What a wonderful presentation. We also learned a lot from your presentation. I mean, the kind of timeline that you have shown, and right from the industrial revolution till the modernist advent of modernist architecture in India. So everything is, very well synchronized. All are in a kind of alignment. I was thinking that some movie is going on, and you are just describing the movie, and we are just enjoying the movie. That's what we actually I enjoyed a lot, the kind of movie that you've shown, and hopefully my students also have learned a lot from the kind of movie that you've shown. And this is the right way of teaching history of architecture. That I mean, if you follow the complete guideline, then nothing is coming off the track. So everything is on the track, and everything is in your mind, and you are following the previous, and you can think of the future and being in the present. So I think it was a wonderful presentation, and the way you presented was awesome, and hopefully students also have learned a lot. And this is the question answer session. So any student who has got any question, because I am completely questionless after the presentation. It was so wonderfully explained. I am completely questionless.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Really, Pankaj sir, wonderful presentation, and we have also learned a lot after sequencing the order of the presentation, timeline of the presentation. Absolutely, we can say, sir, excellent, wonderful presentation in one word.
Thank you, Nagendraji. Thank you.
Now,
Now
Himmat
anyone
sir,
can ask questions. House is open.
Himmat sir, follow the answer questions.
Any question, beta? Any student? I think they are also stunned with the presentation as to what to ask, because everything has been clearly explained and comprehensively explained. Come on, anyone? Parminder is asking something.
Excuse me, am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Parminder, if possible, can you on your video, please? Switch on your video.
Sir, actually, I'm on desktop. I'm on my desktop. I don't have a webcam. Sorry for that.
Okay.
No issues. No issues.
Sir, I'm just like we have learned, how we started from industrial revolution and till now time. So, sir, what's your view? Like, what's future of this kind of architecture? Because this is very interesting. I am very keen in this sort of, time lapse and things which we see, and I'm very fond of this sort of architecture. But now at times we see, for example, in Punjab, we see, people copying design and we having very similar sort of set of designs. Like if we see residential area, we see the people are, taking the ideas and just whole Punjab is going on, same thing. So what's your take on, this legend architecture aspects with this domino effect and their sort of things, and what should be their future and what future you think they have, and how we can implement and what things we should learn from that?
The question you are asking is basically the thing is what we are doing today is just that you are absolutely right. We are copying from the past and taking just somebody's taking a pediment, somebody's taking a colonnade over in the front of a facade, somebody's doing this and that. That is not any regular style is going on. Basically, modern architecture, I told in the last 2 or 3 slides, at the last 3 slides of my presentation, that it comes to an end and move towards the postmodernism, that movement, because of the reason that it was a universal language which was not too much adapted to the Indian culture and Indian climate. I am talking two terms, Indian culture and Indian climate. So from climatic point of view, I already told during the presentation that the Perry-Generate architecture was much more local in context, in comparison, sensitive to the Indian climate rather than the architecture of the Corbusier. So in that way, I can say we are not, we should not
24
use
participants.
we should not use this architecture as such for our future course, but though contextualization of this architecture and within the modernist fold can be used, and that was ideally represented. I had cut short the presentation from 250 slides to 107 slides to finish it off in 1 hour. So basically, if you are interested, you just see the works of B.V. Doshi in the 60s and the works of B.B. Doshi in 1980s, 90s. IIM Bangalore is an ideal example of B.B. Doshi work in which he used the contextualization and regional architecture and the respect to the culture within the modernist fold. See the same architect who worked with the Le Corbusier, who was said to be the, you can say, the professional son of Le Corbusier in India, in the world even here it is called named like that. And that fellow changed his strand from pure modernist form to the local contextual forms with the regional respect. And you just see that architecture of Doshi. Just read the B.V. Doshi and you will find the answer to your question, that what kind the architecture people we are using and what kind of architecture we are doing at present is, I don't want to use the term, it is a very term that was used by the very well-known architect Achityapi Kanvinde in one of the interviews. He said it is a pajama architecture. Whatever they are fitting, they just fitting it, and it's a reason is, he said, commercialization. कह रहे दुकानें खुली हुई हैं, आज मैं नहीं बनाऊंगा तो दूसरी दुकान वाला बना देगा आपको, तो बेटर है मैं ही बना दूं. तो इसलिए whatever client is saying, however the way client is satisfied, people are just making it without thinking about what architecture says, what architecture expression says, what kind of style we should follow. That is not there. The reason behind this is a commercialization. And just see the style of architecture of Doshi. You will find the answer how he changed from pure modernist to a within modernist fold with the contextualization of the climate. I hope I addressed your query, Parminder.
Yes, sir, absolutely, sir.
I want to add something. I want to add something to what sir has said. The point which comes to my mind is the problem of knowing about the architecture. That's the real problem. Kind of presentation that you have shown, sir has shown, and we have already seen that the kind of in-depth knowledge that they were having about massing, about bringing some kind of puncture and the alignment and the kind of expression they wanted to use. Those were so perfect because their knowledge was so in depth. Now in architecture, students are not paying attention to the real architecture. They just want to copy paste, and what they do in the field also. So they are not responding to the climatic conditions. They are not responding to the context. They are not responding to the human behavior. What client is said, that is everything for them. That's the real problem, because they are not educating their client. That is the real problem, because they themselves are not educated. They don't have much knowledge, in-depth knowledge about the architecture. That's why they are not able to educate.
You are absolutely right, sir. I also strongly agree, because it's a very valid point, because the basic reason behind this is that our history of architecture, students are very poor or very weak at history of architecture, and they are not grasping it in depth, what kind of styles are going on, what kind of styles were going on, how we come to this kind of architecture, what was the reason. They are not interested in that. They're just, that is what you are saying, CCP, cut, copy, paste. Submission उठाई, paste कर दी, और वही काम अब field में हो रहा है कि जो client ने कह दिया कि it should be like this, it should be like this. So they are doing it.
The problem is the shortcut. They want everything in shortcut.
Short-term gains. They want short-term gains.
हाँ, तो ये समस्या है. So you need to learn the things in a proper process. Like a flower is growing, which is following the complete process. Otherwise, you cannot grow a flower. So that's why this similar way the architecture is. I mean, it grows in a very steady manner, but you want to shoot up and finish it in a short time. So problem to आएंगी.
Yes, sir.
Got it?
Thank you, sir. I really relate with this current scenario. Like, I just want to share one more thing. Like, I have seen in some offices, they just design a plan and they just give it to any freelance designer for 3D. So that same freelancer designer or 3D, they just use that conventional way that that commercialization that sir has shared and you have also shared. Just use the same concept on all the designs and they just use similar. So I really connect that thing with that. And thank you, sir, Pankaj sir and Himmat sir. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot.
Any other question from the audience, from the participants?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Pradyum. Pradyum, carry on, beta.
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, like when someone asks, like, what is the basic features of this modern architecture, then to a common people, how can we say the features, like this ornamentation, or maybe just the basic forms, or any special features we can add to modern architecture? Like if someone asks, we need to build a modern house. Hello, sir.
Pradyum, what you want to ask specifically, kindly specify your question, please.
Okay, sir.
I could not get your question.
Yes, I'm just saying that, like,
Ask
sir has
clearly
told
now.
about, yes, sir has told us about many features of this modern times, modern architecture, right, sir? Like this Art Nouveau movement, there's a lot of ornamentation, and even in this FL Wright and this Le Corbusier, they have just basic features of this one structures. So like if someone asks that if we want to build a modern house, then what are the key features that we should consider while making the building?
That is what we are talking about, that we should respect the features whichever are suitable to our culture, our climate. Those features should be incorporated instead of directly copying the features. That is what we were already answering the question of Parminder, that we should follow those stands that is most convenient to society, as for the welfare of society as well as culture and the climate. So that should be there. It should represent, because architecture is an expression of society, and the responsibility lies on the shoulder of an architect to be very sensitive about those things. At the same time, it is a place where a person is going to live. So it should be comfortable also. So for making it comfortable, climate is a major role. So for climatic sensitivity as well as cultural sensitivity are the two important aspects. Instead of taking a list of these elements should be used for the modern architecture, we should be contextualizing those lists, because in our country we have one complete license from Council of Architecture for practicing. But I think in the foreign countries it's not like that. If the hilly town is there is a separate license. If it's on the plains, it's a separate license. So there are, because reason behind there, that is because the features are different, climate is different, culture is different, so the requirements are different. That should be the way, not the one list that these elements should be used. List I have already shown of the modern architecture, that the elements of international style, elements of modern architecture, what were those elements? Simplicity of form, straight lines, and then honesty of expression. There are a list. I have got a detailed list of these things, but I'm not showing it in this presentation because that will not serve the purpose. The purpose is we should be sensitive to those things and the needs of the society and the needs of the climate. That should be the governing factor instead of copying a complete list. That is what we were talking about. B.V. Doshi also. He started changing his architecture from one end to the other end. Is it fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Excellent.
think,
Sir.
yes, sir. I think the answer just changed my perspective of seeing what modern architecture is. Thank you so much.
Any other question? Any other student who has got any question, any query, anything to?
Yes, someone is Naman Jain is writing in the chat box.
What is the difference between the modernist architecture and the postmodernist architecture in terms? Just a minute.
Naman, if you are here, you
terms
can
of
directly
form
talk.
and meaning. Form and meaning. Okay. So the difference between modernist architecture and postmodernist architecture, that is actually, you can say, the postmodernist architecture started from where the modernist architecture ends. And it started with the word contextualization. When we changed the universality of the modernist architecture and introduced the contextuality in that, that comes the strand of postmodernist architecture. So it started with the contextualization and respect to the climate and the context, and that is what postmodernism is, and is drifting away from the modernist, which was a universal language applied all over the world. And example of this is, again, I am focusing on Doshi, changed his strand from modernist to postmodernist in 1980s. Works before 1917 and work after 1970s of Doshi will clear you that strand. If you want more details, there are a lot of books. It's a Charles Jenks books is there on postmodernism, and you can read that and you will get the clarity. There are 4 strands of postmodernism. I don't want to discuss in this presentation that, because that's a full-fledged topic. It's a very vast topic, rather more than modernist architecture topic. So there are 4 strands of architecture, more postmodernist architecture, in which one of the architecture is the vernacular architecture, and which is being advocated by in the architecture of you can say Laurie Baker.
So Naman, whatever the suggestion and book's name given by sir, you can note down and you can try to go through that book. Okay, Naman.
If you read that book, you will find the answer to those questions. Postmodernists, what are those 4 strands? And basic difference that you asked is basically the contextualization, which was lacking in the modernist architecture. It was a universal architecture, and to make it contextual to the need based, to the society based, to the culture based, to the climate based, is the postmodern strand, in a very brief form, in a very layman's language of architecture.
Himmat sir, any more question?
Student, Rohaniyat, Luka, Priyanka, any student who has got any other question? Mohit, Tarun, come on, come on. No question? No question? I think it's over.
Sir, I am asking one question. You have explained very nicely regarding the Barcelona Pavilion designed by the master architect M.V. Rohe, Mies Rohe, and the grade given by the M.V. Rohe, that is less is more.
Yeah.
Less is more.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate generally when we talk about the great thoughts given by the master architect, like form follows function, function follow form, less is more. Some have said less is more. So I am talking about what can you enlighten us, to all our budding architects, how we can utilize this great thoughts given by the master architect, less is more, in context of modern design or international design, sir.
Less is more.
M.V. Rohe have given.
Yeah. In fact,
Wonderful.
it was this line was written in that presentation slide of Barcelona Pavilion,
Exactly. Yes.
and I have intentionally deleted those so many lines that it will be a too big presentation to be presented in 1 hour. So basically, less is more started in the modernism. Basically, modern architecture is less is more concept, because whatever is essential, I have said in one of my slides, yeah, whatever is essential should stay. Whatever is over that is ornamentation or articulation, that should go away. Simplicity, because economic discipline was required at the same time after the destruction of first world war. So that way, whatever architecture we are doing at present, that is not less is more. That is purely, we are just you can say there may be so many reasons behind that. Some of the reasons are commercial, that the square feet is running and architect's meter is running, that kind of thing is there. But actually, that is why we say na ki whatever less is more is very important, because modernist architecture told us that thing. Less is more. Whatever is essential should be made. We should not go for false ornamentation. We should not go for false cladding. We should not go for that thing. Just a moment, I will share you know one very interesting slide. That is मैंने उसको skip कर दिया था. That was a हसमुख सी पटेल की building जो मैंने आपको दिखाई. उसकी जो मैंने आपको स्टेट दिखाया, वो जब बनी थी, वो बिल्डिंग ब्रुटलिस्ट आर्किटेक्चर में बनी थी. जो उसकी आज की स्टेट है, मैं अगर आपको दिखाऊं ना, तो आप देख के हैरान रह जाएंगे कि वो हम लेस इज मोर के कॉन्सेप्ट को तो बहुत पीछे छोड़ा है. आई जस्ट
Okay.
शो यू, जस्ट अ
Yes,
मोमेंट,
sir.
इफ
Sir,
आई कैन
please, sir. Please,
गेट
sir.
जस्ट अ मोमेंट प्लीज. Nagendraji, it will take just 1 minute.
No issue, sir.
I have to just dug it out. It's there. Let me.
So meanwhile, I am directing all budding architects of third year, first year, second year students. If you have any question, write down and talk with our today expert guest, Dr. Pankaj Chhabra, sir. Sir is very renowned Indian professor, architect, planner, right? Great academician. So you people are directed. Please write down the question, ask, and take the golden opportunity, chance to interact with the master professor, our guest, Dr. Pankaj Chhabra, sir. If any student is facing problem in interaction, you will also drop question in chat box. We, Professor Himmat Bhatia, sir, and I personally care. Okay, student?
हाँ जी नगेंद्र जी, shall I share my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you see?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Coming, sir.
It's the same building. Just see, sir. Where is less is more now. It's the same building.
Yes.
It's a brutalist architecture, and now it is cladded. ACP sheets are there. What we have made this building. This is the plan of this building.
Dena Bank Ahmedabad, right?
It is what I had shown you in my presentation. And at present state, this building is like this. Very fine architecture. And we are just cladding it. Are we following less is more? I don't think so.
I think, sir, Hasmukh C. Patel, father of Bimal Patel, na? Right?
Yeah. Who designed the IIM new campus, Ahmedabad extension?
Right. And also designing the new Parliament House.
Yes.
Yes, yes, sir. Okay.
And you,
Yes,
but you
sir.
can just see where is less is more.
We got, sir.
See
We
the
got it,
state
sir.
of affair.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir, for more
I want to say
enlighten on
something
this
on less is
particular
more.
topic.
Again,
Haji.
sir, I have
Yes, yes,
something to
please,
say.
please, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Sir, actually, Barcelona Pavilion that Nagin sir was talking about. So, how this less is more came to his mind, Master Architect, Mr. Rohe. Uh, I mean, our needs are changing day by day. So, what he has done is he has made a complete boundary, and all the inside bound walls are actually moving. So,
Yes,
whatever the
yes.
way you can move, you can. This was the only building, first building in 1929, which was having a moving walls inside. So you can make a kind of flexibility in spaces. So I mean, you create a kind of small space, and within the space, same space, you can generate so many different functions in a different time. So that's why he has created the word less is more. But
He
now what
created.
we are doing, we are creating some stupidity in architecture. Like you have shown the glass facade. So this glass facade is adding a lot of light, and microclimate of that area will also be completely vanished. And in the style of, or in the addition of international style we are putting on the glass, but this is not the style of our architecture or our climatic conditions or our culture, but we are
Even
following
architectural expression will totally fade away.
fade away. Yes.
Basically, we are just cutting a timeline for building and timeline of architecture by just adding a cladding over that, because that history and that chronology will be out of place, because that will be deleted from this. That is, we are deleting that building from that chronology.
True, true, true. Absolutely. So thank you very much, sir, for taking time out and giving us such a wonderful presentation.
Yes.
I think
Thank you,
one
sir.
more session is heading in ahead in the future, postmodernistic architecture, because in one line we cannot give the in postmodernistic architecture. So maybe if the time comes, then we certainly request you to come and give
And
some
sir,
enlightenment to our students. So
and
thank you
sir
so
have
much.
already worked on sustainability now. Himmat sir,
Yes, sir.
sir will have also worked on sustainability.
Hmm.
Then uh, you are also inviting in na OTP.
Yeah. That we'll talk separately, not
Yes,
now. Sir, I
sir.
will request you in one of my short course. So you have done a lot of work in smart cities. So
After seeing your CV, sir, and presentation, sir have already said that sir will be best speaker in our upcoming OTP, outreach training program. That is the
Sir, sure,
STC
sir.
short term course, sir.
so for 1.5 hours, we will invite you for this, and
Sir,
you
no
can
issues.
tighten your ideas with your ideas, and I will share you the details, sir.
No issues, sir. No issues. Thank you, sir. Hemant, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Sir.
Nagendra ji.
Thank you very much, sir, and happy
Okay.
Basant Panchami.
Same to you, ji. Same to everyone. Same to everyone. Okay,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving valuable time for our budding architects. And we are hoping that our students have taken the advantage, and the student who have not joined, attended, please see the recorded video. Thank you very much once again, sir.
Okay, ji. Okay. I take leave. Thank you, ji. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Ah. Okay, my dear students. So thank you once again for your cool and calm patience. And today is Basant Panchami. Whole nation is celebrating Basant Panchami, and Basant Panchami is a festival in India that marks the preparation for the arrival of spring. The festival is celebrated by people in various ways, depending upon the particular region, right? On this, on this occasion, uh, people worship Goddess Saraswati to get enlightened with the knowledge and to get rid of lethargy, sluggishness, and ignorance. Right? Basant Panchami is celebrated on 5th day of the bright half of the month of the Magh. You people, I think, not understand the month Magh, that is the Hindi month, which usually falls either in January, but in this year, today, the Basant Utsav or Basant Panchami, uh, we celebrate very joyously, as well as we try to, you know, uh, celebrate to enlighten the knowledge and skill, right? And this is the expression that, okay, come and we will celebrate the different change transition of the particular uh, weather, right? So on this occasion of Basant Panchami, bring the wealth of knowledge to you. May you be blessed by Goddess Saraswati and try to whatever you want in your life, my dear budding architects. Once again, thank you very much. And you people always try to interact with the expert and ask the question. Our Professor Himmat Bhatia ji, AIA coordinator, always try to invite the expert people from different field for your benefit basically, and same type of enthusiasm we need it from our budding architects, right? Because you people are very smart, intelligent, and very dedicated, proactive in all respect. So we are hoping that this expert lecture by Dr. Pankaj Chhabra sir will very helpful for you people. And in upcoming time, we will invite more expert architect and a speaker for your benefit. Uh, Thank you once again. Happy Basant Panchami. Thank you once again and happy Basant Panchami. And where are you? Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.